Hello and welcome to the first installment of the Dubois Orchestra Podcast. My name is Joe LaRocca, Executive Director of the Dubois Orchestra, and with me, well, I should say introducing our new Artistic Director, Dominique Hoskin.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, one of the main reasons we're doing this podcast is because we have so many excellent conversations within the orchestra, but also, outside of the orchestra as well, and people that I've spoken with in different organizations and people on our advisory board. And I thought this would be an amazing way just to have a platform to, give more information to our audience and also to just have this conversation be a little bit more public, right? So in general, this podcast is going to be discussing social issues in and around classical music, particularly those of racial justice and gender equality, and also just to plug the orchestra and brag about our achievements and, you know, uh, advertise any concerts coming up. So, and again, this is information for people who, don't want to have to read the extensive program notes or, a reason not to have very long pre-concert talks or anything like that, although we might have those as well. Time will tell. One of the big things about this podcast is that it's going to be very audience driven, right? So everyone is welcome to submit questions either on our Facebook page, just look up Dubois Orchestra, or through our website, duboisorchestra.org, where you can find recordings and where to donate and all that good stuff, or email us at duboisorchestra@gmail.com. So let's get the ball rolling. I think, one of the things I wanted to do was sort of try to get members of the administration and of the orchestra and former members of the orchestra to sort of put themselves into the shoes of audience members and get them to generate questions that would, for the both of us, that they think that community members around Cambridge and around the Boston area and just overall, listeners around the world try to think about what they would ask, right? So one of the first questions that I really liked was this is from our concertmaster, Thomas Cooper. And he asked, there are a lot of individuals and ensembles whose mantra or mission includes some version of social justice through music, right? Much of the time, however, these ensembles or individuals really just use this as a badge rather than a reflection of their output. How is Dubois different, and how will it be different? Now, what do you say to that, Dominique?
Yeah, so I think one of the remarkable things about the Du Bois Orchestra is it's existed for a while. It's not just a recent thing that just came about in the last few months or last year or so. I mean, it really has a history and a strong track record of caring about these types of issues. The orchestra, while, certainly diversity within the orchestra itself could be improved, but it definitely strives to represent the entire population. And I think it's also really important that there be a group that's really dedicated to music from underrepresented composers, and it's dedicated to giving the music a real proper treatment and a good performance.
Yeah. So would you say that's like a part of your vision as to what what the artistic direction is going to be?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, I think there's going to be certainly integrating the underrepresented composers of the past with the classical repertoire, but also we want to, accept scores from new composers and encourage more young people of color and women to compose and to submit compositions for orchestras to play.
Well, and you know, I think about it all the time too, is that new composers, especially young ones fresh out of school, talk about underrepresented. I mean, new composers just don't get any play in general. Um, but I think, one of the things that I think about when it comes to what makes Du Bois really different in that respect, or really, hammering home that mission of social justice through music, is that we prioritize having this repertoire alongside the canon, right? So having it be like having Florence Price alongside Beethoven, or having William Grant Still alongside Mozart, or having Joseph Bologna, alongside, Bach or something. So it's really a matter of, and that's where I think a lot of orchestras fall short, right? In that they program these, underrepresented composers, particularly women composers and Black composers, and really, separate where they put it, right? It's just
Yeah.
like they kind of wedge it into a pops concert or something, which, I mean, let's be honest, the orchestra members never take too seriously, right? I mean, at
Yeah.
least not as much as they're going to take like a Shostakovich symphony or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I,
But
I I agree, and I think that's one of the real strengths of this orchestra is that, or one of the real unique features is that we program the music alongside with music from more standard repertoire composers, and we're going to treat each composer with equal dignity, equal respect, equal prep time, relative to the difficulty of the piece. We're not. This is not just, and it's not just a one time thing. This is going to be the recurring format.
absolutely, and I think, and that's talking about the future a lot. But where we've done that in the past, we had a commissioned a piece by a Japanese woman composer named Sachiko Murata, who was our principal oboist at the time as well. And so there was a lot of things we did, but a mainstay of our orchestra has been Florence Price, who I'm kind of calling the Beethoven of our orchestra, just because we've repeated her as much as other orchestras would repeat Beethoven. Only her, especially since we'll probably be programming Mississippi River Suite as a part of our first concert, hopefully in May, depending on where COVID takes us. But definitely, throughout the next few years, I mean, we're going to see that. So we're going to see her a lot in other orchestras as well. I mean, you already see
Yes.
the Boston Symphony, I think, playing a string quartet by her. And as a matter of fact, it was one of the pieces that was unearthed in her family home in St. Anne, Illinois, I believe, some small town near Kankakee. And beneath the floorboards, they found a whole, treasure trove of manuscripts by her. And one of those pieces is one that we happen to be able to get our hands on and do the world premiere of the fully orchestrated piece. But yeah, and that was a really significant piece to unearth, because first of all, it's a piece for orchestra, chorus, organ, and piano, right? I was playing principal flute at the time, and it was just a magnificent experience to be a part of it, and to sort of play something that was so recently unearthed by someone who I feel like is going to be a very, very significant voice, especially in the American sort of canon of classical music, alongside people like Aaron Copland and that. So yeah, I mean, everyone can listen to that recording on the website duboisorchestra.org. So what's your opinion on Florence Price?
Yeah, I mean, I think that her music is wonderful, and I look forward to exploring more of it. Honestly, unfortunately, music from underrepresented composers is not really something that I grew up playing in many of my orchestras. Um, I think at MIT there was one time we had a concert of all female composers, and that was some really great and fun music, and it was very interesting. And we played it in Boston Symphony, and it was a great experience. And so I've listened to a few of the Florence Price pieces, and yeah, I mean, I think they're really interesting and compelling, and not only the pieces themselves, but I'd love to know more about the story of, like, why those pieces were hidden for so long, right? Why weren't they published? What's the story behind how they got? And maybe that's something we'll never know, or maybe there'll be some evidence of that, when we take a look at the scores and listen to the pieces themselves. But I think it's a really fascinating to discover some of these great composers that existed during the common practice period, or some of the later period in the United States, and just just to see what happened to their music.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we talked about early on too, is trying to find a way to just aid in the research
Mhm.
of these composers, because it's really hard to come in, blind with a lot of them. But at the same time, with Price, Price is a lot like Bach in a lot of ways. The music kind of plays itself. Once you start to once you start to hear it coming from your instruments, it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
Mhm.
Especially, being American and hearing, and just kind of growing up with that kind of, you know, with those kinds of sonorities in our ears
Mhm.
already.
Yeah.
You know, another question is, why do you think people should visit, or why do you think people should attend Dubois Orchestra concerts?
Yeah, so I think, as I said before, our goal is to really give a voice, like a high quality performance of this music, and I think that's something that, yeah, some other orchestras are going to do it, but I think you're going to be hard pressed to find an orchestra that will, that will make a difference as frequently and again at as high a level as we plan to do. I mean, the Boston Symphony is not going to perform underrepresented composers, at every concert, right? So, yeah, I think that's going to be very interesting, and certainly it'll be one of the premier orchestras to listen to in Boston, and I think we'll offer, yeah, unique experience, certainly in some of the social aspects and some of maybe the pre-concert talks and speakers. So there's really, we have a lot of plans in the works for what to do with this and how to augment the music with, as we're talking about, some of the history behind it. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a really rewarding and just eye-opening experience for all those who attend.
Yeah, I think, trying to put myself into the shoes of the audience, one of the things that I would feel good about is supporting a grassroots organization, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we're coming from being, a student orchestra at Harvard to becoming an independent organization, with ties to Harvard, but really, standing on our own 2 feet and, building from the bottom up an excellent orchestra, you know and one of the things that is astounding to me is the fact that, I mean, nowadays you're starting to see the very beginnings of a lot of great organizations, right? Sphinx comes to mind, right? They've been around for, a while at this point, but not nearly as long as organizations like, all the orchestras that happen to be the first to adopt the name of the city that they're in, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are completely supported by the city and have been around forever. So, it's good to, for me, I feel like it would be good to come in and think like, wow, this is the beginning of something very special. Um, and of course, a lot of that means, and well, one of the things that we've tried to do and we're going to try to do in the future is keep all the concerts free. I don't think any organization, frankly, can really claim to be, connected to everyone in society or open to everyone in the community, if it's expensive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, of course, I'll give credit to, all these organizations. A lot of the times, like museums will have free days and things like that. And, uh, um, you know, uh, symphonies will have discounted seats for students. And, all right, well, let's move on to another question. Okay. When did you first hear about the Du Bois Orchestra and what were your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of knew Nathaniel as my musical circle, my Boston musical circle was expanding. I got to know Nathaniel through a few of performances we did together at MIT, and then I know that at one point Nathaniel was the music director, and so yeah, I think eventually I just saw on Facebook that they were having a concert and they were playing some interesting music, so I decided to come and give a listen, and I was very impressed. I think I heard the concert where you all played Dvorak 9.
Oh yeah, I remember that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember certainly, I mean, there was a lot of good that I saw, especially given that I know that you were thin in some of the instruments, and trying to play in that cramped space, that big symphony. I mean, that's a tall order. So I was just very intrigued and fascinated. And I think that concert you also had you got the ordinance from the city of Cambridge. Um
Oh, right, the
so
proclamation.
yeah, the
Right.
proclamation. Yes,
You know what? I
yes.
love the proclamation because it was a big deal, right? Because the mayor's office is just acknowledging that we're doing a thing, right?
Mhm.
But I thought it was really funny because I remember asking like, "What is that?" And they're acknowledging our existence. I'm like, "Oh, that's great. That's what a proclamation is."
Mhm.
Yeah, it was funny with that concert, like many concerts. I mean, a little bit about my background. I was, I started off as personnel director in year 2 of this ensemble, and the first thing I did was look around and notice that there were like this one bassoon, and I thought, oh, I know a bassoon player, right? And so I came in with a bassoon player, and the next time I came in with a few more, and before I knew it, I was personnel director, right? Actively recruiting for an unpaid, essentially student orchestra. But luckily I was doing my artist diploma at Longy at the time, and that was really close by, so I could easily just be like, hey, come on, come sight read, it'll be fun, and people would end up staying because it was pretty fun.
Mhm.
And then that was the time Kai Johannes Polzoffer was the conductor, was the artistic director. And then not long after that, I think it was the year after, that's when Nathaniel came to the orchestra. And Nathaniel was such a huge just force of positivity for everybody. He and things were going well in the orchestra, but really I feel like he exuded a sort of you know positive leadership
Mhm.
that really kept people interested in staying, and so it was pretty easy to get people to stay, right?
Mhm.
And things were starting to get a bit more organized, and at that time we had sort of shifted. By that time we had very few people from Harvard. We still had Harvard people, and so we dropped the at Harvard name and just
Mhm.
became the Dubois Orchestra, right? But we still spoke with the Graduate School of Education where we have our affiliation, and they say, yeah, we have an affiliation with the orchestra, and we have people from the Graduate School of Education on our advisory board, and hopefully we'll be able to draw from Harvard, for the orchestra and for the administration when things start to open up again post COVID. And another big thing during that time was Nathaniel helped find our current concertmaster, Thomas Cooper, who again was a godsend, because once you have a solid, I knew at that point, I'm like, the orchestra is not going to survive until we have a rock solid concertmaster. And of course, all of these positions, administrative positions, leadership positions within the orchestra, the conductor, advisory board, none of these are paid positions, right? Because we're still a very young organization, right? I mean, we're going to be moving into being, our own nonprofit. Right now we have fiscal sponsorship, so we're doing fundraising to sort of just rent a venue that's big enough to facilitate us. So that's really the kind of effort that's going into the organization, right? Just from the bottom up.
It's definitely been a blessing, compared to some of the other orchestras I've worked with, to have such a passionate group of core members willing to volunteer their time and effort to really help make this thing run again. So I'm really excited for the future and looking forward to when some of these restrictions start to ease, and hopefully we can see each other in person for a rehearsal.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't even know if we've ever seen each other like in person, right, Dominique?
Not officially, I don't think, if we met.
I
I mean,
don't think so.
we've probably seen each other. I mean, again, we've probably been in the same, the same
Yes,
church at the same time at some point. Oh, we certainly have, right, in the Belmont Festival.
that's right. The summer
Yes.
orchestra was
Yeah.
one of Nathaniel's summer projects in
Hmm.
Belmont.
Yep.
And another on another topic, one of the things that I really find important is how um orchestras conduct auditions, right?
Hmm.
um so whether or not we can become a really well established orchestra, the way you audition, I feel like, is really important. Now,
Hmm.
one thing I remember seeing an article recently talking about, um, do blind auditions really work? Should we eliminate blind auditions because they're not really working? And I would argue that no organization really does blind auditions, if you think
Yeah.
about it, right?
Yeah.
Because in order to have a blind audition, first of all, every audition has a CV round, right?
Hmm.
So automatically, who that person is, what their background is, what their gender is, what their
Hmm.
race is. Like, there's no question about it. And if you don't know by their name and resume, it's a simple Facebook search, right?
Yeah.
So you know sort of, and I'm not accusing any organization of being like actively discriminatory, right? But I mean, these things can kind of work your way into their subconscious, right? And it can be, I mean, you think about it, I mean, you look at somebody's resume, you think, oh wow, this person went to Juilliard, they went to Curtis, blah blah blah, and immediately you put them on a pedestal in your mind, right? Whereas someone like me who went to Northern Illinois University, right, because I wanted to spend less on a master's degree, and not go massively into debt, it's like, oh well, this guy has to really prove himself. So that's one of the things that I think we're going to do is just eliminate the CV round,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
as someone who, I
yeah.
mean, I have, I'm kind of between both worlds here. Yes, on the one hand, I'm an MIT undergrad and an MIT PhD student, so I have that name that really, kind of garners like respect and reputation. But on the other hand, in terms of music, I'm not conservatory educated, so I really had to work my way up. Starting from just playing through orchestras and expanding my musical circle. And I was pleasantly surprised and almost a little bit in shock when Nathaniel trusted me enough to put me in charge of such a great and dedicated group of musicians. So yeah, so I'm very much I know that it's possible to be a good musician without necessarily a conservatory education. And I know there are a lot of musicians like me that have day jobs in engineering or medicine or whatever else it may be. And so yeah, I think for me it's just about the music. And again, as I mentioned before, the goal is to really give this music the best treatment that we can. So really what we care about is the quality of your playing, and whether or not you're on board with the general mission of the orchestra, and you're gonna be a good fit for us in that regard too. So it does not matter. I don't care at all whether or not you went to Juilliard or Boston Conservatory or not, right? So
But again, that it's all going to depend on how things sort of move forward post COVID, right? You
yeah,
need to do a
of course,
concert
yeah,
first.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and to kind of get into that just a little bit. I mean, you hit the nail on the head in the sense that like playing in orchestras is very difficult, and it just it's a difficult if you just think about it almost mathematically. Like the problem of like, okay, trying to have you know 80 people play together as a real cohesive unit and have it sound good. It's just really hard. I mean, certain instruments, I mean, strings do it a little easier, which is why that's why orchestras only have two clarinets usually. But yeah, it's not easy. And certainly being able to really invest in our own musicians is something that will really pay dividends later on. So
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that I feel like would that kind of makes me think of another sort of vision we have for the future is also creating a wind ensemble, because there's all these wind players, and sometimes there's
yes.
only so many orchestras, right? So even having like a chamber winds group would be an amazing thing to have, to program separate concerts or even
Yeah.
within the same concert, depending. So actually, going along those lines, what artists and composers inspire you the most?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, I think with composers, I'd say traditionally classical music has kind of served an interesting role in my life, and it's certainly I can say that I had a deeper like once I started conducting, especially and really like digging into scores and learning the theory. I had a deeper appreciation, which is why I think what we were speaking about, maybe even using this podcast as to sort of offer a sort of free music education would be something really beneficial. But anyways, I think growing up, classical music was really like I'm a very stoic person emotionally in general, and so classical music was always the thing that got me that really would allow me to sort of feel and express my myself in a way that just I normally couldn't. And so I mean certainly I'm not gonna lie, I grew up around a lot of the traditional composers. So I mean, like I'd say as a conductor, I have a propensity for Tchaikovsky. Just that the
Mm.
something that's so just real and so like I guess authentic and beautiful about his music. And in terms of performers, I mean there's so many that I like. Certainly, I'd say like if I had to pick one performer to only listen to ever, I'd probably have to say just Jackie Dupree, and just the way that she expresses herself when she plays the cello. I really love her Dvorak. It's just so moving, and obviously she's known for her Elgar. So I think that's just kind of that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's just, I think my favorite composer, my favorite piece, or my favorite musician, that might change weekly depending on my mood. I think for me, again, it's hard to really name a particular like person that was my inspiration, but I think it was just classical music in general. As I just grew up playing it, listening to it, and as I learned more about it, I love, things that are difficult and things that are complex. I love challenges. I certainly like, communicating with people and being in leadership positions. So all of that was really, like and I certainly have a very, again, personal connection with just the lush, romantic, maximalist composer. So that's the stuff that
Maximalist.
gets played a lot, played a lot in my playlist. So yeah, and it's yeah, and I loved I actually will say, like, a big inspiration for me, honestly, was watching a lot of the Ben Zander master classes about the
Mm.
meaning of music and how to perform in a way that really moves the audience. I mean, I think, his master classes in general are some of the best in terms of general performance. And then I've certainly watched a lot of master classes of, famous conductors, like the Daniel Gatti master classes are really good. So yeah, I mean, I think just the exposure to it, and just the power, and I'm in awe of it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially, and that's why I'm so fascinated to learn more about the life of Florence Price, for example, before we, go on to perform her music more. Because it must have been just such a massive struggle, to be
Mm-hmm.
someone who's had works performed by the Chicago Symphony, but was pretty much forgotten for a while. I mean, only now people are starting to perform her works again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a fascinating journey
Yes.
to both to help try to facilitate the growth of the orchestra, but also just explore, the artistry involved and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and in order for that to exist, we're going to have to depend almost 100% on donations. So if any of you out there would like to donate, you can go to duboisorchestra.org and go to support the DBO tab, and it's really easy to do, and it's tax deductible through our fiscal sponsor, Fractured Atlas. So that's something you can do. And just to remind everybody of our Facebook page and our I believe we're going to have an Instagram. That's probably a response you do not know, but we're probably going to. And our website, duboisorchestra.org. And feel free to contact us through any of those means. And again, a lot of what this podcast is going to be is responding to people's questions and people's curiosities. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to be based on what you, the listener, want. So please feel free to comment and message us directly, duboisorchestra@gmail.com, or through our contact form on the website, duboisorchestra.org, or through our Facebook page. And so yeah, I think that's good enough for our first episode.
Yeah, we covered a wide variety of topics, and yeah, I think we gave them a good overview of kind of like where we stand, where we're trying to go. So
All right,
yeah, we're
great.
just looking
So
forward to the future.
so thank you all for listening again. Thank you, Dominique, for joining me today, and we're looking forward to seeing your artistic vision play out. And I'm Joe LaRocca, the executive director of Dubois Orchestra, and this was the Dubois Orchestra Podcast. I will see you next time.